First, I'd like to thank all of you for coming today. This is a great turnout, and this is a great group. Willie's going to say some specific thank yous, but I would like to thank Paul Smith, Kathy, Dan, Corey, and the others who have worked on this with us for, this will be the fourth year that we've been working on this subject. I think you all know how important it is. We keep reporting on the increasing salinity of our watersheds, our lakes, our streams, etc., and you're going to hear a lot more about that. I'd especially like to thank the Department of Transportation, the state of New York. We have a large contingent from DOT here today. They have been working diligently on this issue. Obviously, they are just as concerned about the environmental impacts of what they do as we are. They have a mandate to try to keep us safe in the winter, and they do that well. So it's a difficult balancing act to try to figure out what we can do to both improve the environment and keep our citizenry safe. And the purpose of today's conference is to see if we can come up with some ideas and recommendations that might take us the next step along this path. The conference history, you probably, many of you were here. In 2010, ADK Action, and I'm on the ADK Action board. I'm also on the Adirondack Council board, so I wear both hats, but I'm representing ADK Action today. We underwrote a study that was done by Dr. Kelting and his team called the Review of the Effects and Costs of Road De-icing with recommendations for winter road maintenance in the Adirondack Park. In 2011, in June, we had a first conference which addressed this report and agreed that added research was needed. And then in June of 2012, we presented a report that Dr. Kelting did, which was published in a peer-reviewed magazine, which had a regional analysis of the effect of on paved roads of sodium and chloride in lakes. And the actions we came up with at that point were that we needed to try alternate methods for treating our roads. And we had a meeting that was hosted by Senator Little in her offices, at which Commissioner John McDonald of DOT, Commissioner Joe Martens of DEC and their staffs, and Senator Little participated, and they agreed that we should try some testing of road systems to see if we could reduce salt through some mechanical and alternate chemical means. You'll be hearing from DOT on the results of this test this morning. You'll also be hearing from Dr. Kelting on some of the work they've been doing with respect to the monitors that were put in above and below the roads on streams, telemetric monitors. So we've had multiple studies going on, which is why this conference is 2.5 years later than the last one, because we've had 2 winters to study. Our agenda this morning is, you've heard the welcome from Kathy Dove, and again, thanks for the use of the room and the facilities. We're going to go from here into a series of presentations. The first one will be Dr. Findley from the Carey Institute, who's going to talk to us about their studies downstate in the Hudson Valley of salt and its impacts. But the morning will be then dedicated to Dr. Kelting's presentation, and then a presentation by Peter Bauer, who is the Executive Director of Protect the Adirondacks, on how some different road construction techniques, porous roads, have had an impact in the Lake George area. We'll break for lunch. It's going to be a short break, a half an hour. There will be sandwiches and so on outside. We're not going to break in the morning. If you have to leave to get a cup of coffee or to use the restroom facilities, just get up and go. We've got too much to cover to otherwise stop. After lunch, we're going to hear from a head of a maintenance branch in the Colorado DOT of what Colorado has done. Dave Weeder is here with us. Very grateful to the state of Colorado for letting Dave come and talk to us about their approach, which is different than New York's, and we're going to have a little bit of discussion afterwards about why. And then we have a presentation by a very accomplished lawyer, Jim Gellermini, who teaches this subject at Cornell, road maintenance and its implications in law. He was also Assistant Attorney General for the state of New York for 20 years, so he's a man worth listening to. We'll have a quick coffee break while we rearrange this room, and then we're going to have 3 breakout sessions, and I'm encouraging all of you to pick the one that you think would be interesting and that you might contribute to. And we're going to look at the 3 potential scenarios One is, should we think about going backwards in time to where we have abrasives and hardpack the way we used to drive? I see a lot of young faces in the audience probably don't remember, but before 1980 thereabouts, we drove on hardpack in the Adirondacks. The other breakout panel would be what could we do that was incremental? How could we move past a pure salt policy? Perhaps other chemicals, perhaps a selective use of abrasives, etc. And the third panel will be about smart science that Dr. Kelting will lead to talk about what else should we be studying, what else could we be doing, and do we know enough? For example, do we know if the surface water salinity growth that we have seen actually is creeping into our aquifers and polluting our wells? We have some belief that that's the case. All the documents and all the presentations are on the ADK Action website at this address. So you don't have to take necessarily notes if you don't want to. You can just go here and pull them down, and we'll keep them up to date. So if there's anything that's missing or anything that comes out of this conference, it will be posted here. I would like to point out quickly that the other two studies that I mentioned are already there. The speaker bios for the people who are talking today are there, the full conference agenda, and a list of the registered attendees. Now, some of you have changed registration at the last moment. There were some people here who did not register in advance and didn't make it into the lists of people who are here today. There's a printout of who we think was registered as of last week, sitting on the table outside, and there's a copy of today's agenda that I just flashed to you also that you can take, and that has the website on it. So even if you didn't write it down, the bottom of that agenda page has the website where you can pick up these documents. Basically, that's it for what I wanted to give you this morning. I'm going to let Willie say a few words, but I want to thank again everybody that's come, and Willie's going to say particular thanks to some of the town supervisors and others who have made the trek here. We know it's a work day, and we really appreciate your being here. So, Willie, would you take it from there?
Thank you, Lee. I think it's appropriate that it's drizzling outside. Yesterday, in talking with some folks, they gave me a fact I hadn't heard yet, and maybe it's not a fact, but they said that when you look at the projections on climate change, one of the things we can expect to see in the Adirondacks is more freezing rain than any other place in the country. So it's very appropriate that there's this drizzle out there. It wouldn't be a surprise if, given it's the Adirondacks, Dr. Dove, just so you know, the weather can change every 5 minutes. There's a saying here, if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. But it's appropriate that's going on outside. It's appropriate that we have this great group of people here today. I want to recognize Steve Kukaris from DOT, our regional director. Thank you for having the whole DOT team here, people from Utica, Elizabethtown, and Plattsburgh, and I know we have a number of folks from Albany, other DOT offices. Hats off to the agency for what you've been doing and trying to do, for being open-minded about experimenting and doing research. I think that's really important. Having the local highway superintendents here, a number of supervisors here, that's critical. We don't want to have an academic discussion with a bunch of academics and environmental advocates thinking about what to do without it being grounded in reality. And having folks that have that grounding from the reality of what's going on out there in the towns, in the hamlets, in the communities, many of which are struggling, is really important. There's a few supervisors we have here, and I can't recognize every community or we use up my allotted time, and Lee will reach out with a big hook. But Bruce Russell, Randy Preston, Peter Schroep, William Chase, and Neil McGovern. I've seen some of you, and others I saw the names, so I think you're here. Thank you very much for being here. And for others, we have some town council members. I want to take a moment just again to recognize Paul Smith and welcome Dr. Dove. Paul Smith has an incredible history of being a leader in the Adirondacks as we deal with issues and move the park forward. The Adirondack Council, as one of many organizations supporting this, put out our annual State of the Park and concluded that the park is far from finished. There's a lot to do in terms of protecting the clean water, making sure we have vibrant communities. With your leadership, Dr. Dove, I'm confident that Paul Smith will play a strong leading role as the Adirondack Park moves forward. Welcome to the Adirondacks. We're all really glad to have you here. I'm glad that the college is in such good hands. When you saw some of the history on this subject, you often saw this conference labeled as the SALT Conference. Those of us that have been used to that terminology might not have bothered to look too closely at the announcements and some of the things that came out this year. But you'll notice there's been a shift in terminology. The main theme for me in the Adirondack Council as we work with our partners, Small Smith, AK Action, a bunch of environmental organizations, we have Watershed groups here, was looking at safe roads, clean water. How do we continue to have safe roads? How do we make sure the roads are even safer? How do we make sure we do a better job on clean water? Those are not things that, well, we try and balance them in a little compromise here for a little bit there. They're things that we should be able to address together in a way that make the roads safer, that make the water cleaner. And I'm hoping that by the end of the day, with this group of people that we have, we're able to look at those goals and develop collaboratively some recommendations that we can move forward on. Maybe some of them have to do with research, maybe some of them have to do with some more tests, how we can move forward, advancing those complementary goals that are so critical for the future of the Adirondack Park. One other item I wanted to mention, I noticed 70 people registered. I've mentioned we have local government and county representatives and DOT. We have DEC represented, the Department of Environmental Conservation. We have the Adirondack Park Agency with folks here. The number of non-governmental organizations, we have lake associations, river associations, environmental groups, watershed coalitions, watershed alliances. John Collins, Northern Forest Center is here. You guys are from over in New Hampshire to here. Thank you very much. I know you didn't come all the way from New Hampshire, John. You've got a shorter drive than that. We have the Carey Institute, Rochester Institute for Technology. I could go on and on. Take a moment to look at that list of organizations that are represented here. Look around, make sure if you don't know people, introduce yourself. The goal is not to have a packed room, although I'm amazed we have such a packed room. The goal is to have different key stakeholders represented so that we can come together, respect each other, recognize the different information we have to put on the table, and figure out how we move forward and make the Adirondack Park better. So thank you. I will keep you on schedule. We're at 9:20, and I will turn it back to Dan or Lee. Thank you.